Here we go. This is the Art of War. Today we'll be summarizing chapters 11 to 12. Let's get this started with right now. Now, chapter 11 to 12, this is going to be a very interesting one. First of all, chapter 11, it's called the 9 kinds of ground. So basically, we're learning the 6 terrains again, but this time instead of terrain, we're learning about grounds. And then chapter 12 is attack by fire, an entire chapter dedicated to how to destroy your enemy with pyrotechnicians. It's an interesting subject too, albeit much less applicable to our lives. But if you do have a brother that you would love to set on fire, go ahead and read that chapter. Albeit most of it you can't use because most of it is illegal nowadays. Okay, so here are the 9 kinds of ground, chapter 11. So the 9 kinds of ground are the scattering ground. I'm gonna write all this. Now these are scattering ground, light ground, strategic ground, open ground, crossroad ground, heavy ground, intractable ground, enclosed ground, and death ground. Let's explain each one by one. Let's start off with the scattering ground. Now the scattering ground itself, as SUN-TZU says, is like, okay, so one thing I'll say first before I talk about any of all this is that all of this is just ground. Wherever that ground is, that's gonna depend on where you or your enemy fight. Whoever makes that decision is the one that we're going to make it. If to someone it's heavy ground, it might be light ground to another. If to someone it's a strategic ground, it might be an enclosed ground to another. To someone it might be an open ground. To another it's a death ground. So let's just get this started with. So when the feudal lords, like when all these at the time they were all these feudal lords, obviously this is ancient China warring states period, they go ahead and they fight on their home territory, like it's home advantage. That's the scattering ground. They know the land well. They've probably grown up here. They've probably understood everything here. They've probably fought thousands of battles here, and as a result, they know every nook and cranny of this place. That's scattering ground, and so that's scattering ground. When an enemy goes ahead and enters and penetrates and invades an enemy's army, like an enemy's territory, but they only go in like about this much. They didn't go in too much. That's called light ground because it's light. You're in there very light. You're not going to do anything there yet. You can't do any heavy damage. Now, strategic ground, that's the ground that obviously, as the name says, it's strategic. And when it offers advantage to any kind of side, like it doesn't necessarily have to be yours, but it could be also to the other sides, to either side. If it like gives any advantage, that's known as strategic ground. Open ground, it's like when anyone, like the enemy or yourself, they can come and go freely. They can enter the place and then they can exit the place. That is known as the open ground. The crossroad ground, though, now that is when the ground borders 3 states. Like you don't just risk fighting your enemy, but you also risk fighting someone else. Like you have to go ahead and you have the right to first to take it, an empire that is on these 3 states. This has mastery, and that is known as crossroad ground because it's on a crossroads. Like there are 3 states, like there's 3 border states over around here. Okay, and now as the opposite of light ground, when an enemy goes in and like when you go in and penetrate enemy territory like very deeply, like let's say into the heart of the capital, that thing, well then congratulations, you're in heavy ground. Intractable ground though is where armies, you have to travel through all these natural places, natural lodgings. When an army travels to mountains, forests, cliffs, crags, marshes, and fens, hard roads, that is the intractable ground. Now, enclosed ground here is like ground when it goes like through narrow places, like gorges or valleys or twisting paths, and where like a smaller force of theirs, they can go ahead and strike out as a larger one. That is the enclosed ground because you only really need a few fewer people to enclose a bunch of people than to like match them up. And then obviously, as death ground is stated, it's where you're going ahead, you're surviving. You just have to survival. You're struggling, and you wish to perish. That is the death ground. And if you actually do die here, then it's definitely death ground. So what are some of the advantages that we go ahead and talk about here? Now here on scattering ground, do not hear his advices. Do not fight. On light ground, you should not stop there. You should keep going in and get into heavy ground. Albeit probably medium ground is better. On strategic ground, you must not attack at all. On open ground, you must not block anyone because that's going to be unfair and probably disadvantageous towards you in the long run. On crossroads ground, because you're bordering a 3 or more nation states, you should make more alliances. Because once you are getting more alliances, you guarantee the fact that once at least one of your states will not fight with you, and may even fight with you on crossroad ground. Let's crossroad grounds, obviously. On heavy grounds, you have to go ahead and blunder, obviously. You're heavy ground. You're way deep into enemy territory. No supply trains are coming towards you. You're going to need to live off the land here. Intractable land, that's more or less you have to keep on marching. You have to keep going. You don't want to be stuck there. On enclosed ground, you have to figure out how to not get enclosed. On death ground, you must fight because, well, if you don't fight, you're dying. If you fight, at least you die while inflicting damage towards the enemy. Would you rather die fighting? Would you rather die cowardly? Would you? Yeah. So that's pretty much all 9 types of ground, and that's the advice that he goes and talks about. You have to unite your armies together. You have to keep constant loyalty between them, because an army who has a general who does not have a big control over him, his own army, well, that is not going to work out for him in the long run. When that has a gain to be had for moving something, well, then that means that you should have made a move, and that when there was none, you have halted. Basically, in a war, it's very essential that you do things very quickly. If you do things very quickly, then you will be able to do anything you can imagine, or at least theoretically, anything you can imagine. Once you go ahead and are able to succeed in doing all that, you will become one of the best generals ever known in that place. You should invade people pretty quickly. Invasion shouldn't last too long. Once you're in enemy territory, you're deep inside enemy territory, there's no going back. You have to go in, penetrate everything with all your might. Try to fight your way back. It's possible, but you're going to lose a bunch of casualties. Remember Napoleon and his invasion of Russia? I don't get why people go ahead and don't get this, but do not invade Russia, even in modern times. It's not the cold winter that's being worried about nowadays. It's because they have mass weapons of destruction too. But back then, it's because do not invade Russia unless you want Mother Cold to go ahead and kill you. And lots of people went ahead and were able to do that, survive going into deep ground. But then once the cold set in, and they're like, oh god, this is too cold for my liking. I'm getting out of here. And the only people who succeeded ever in conquering Russia were the Mongols. And that's only because they were already there. The Mongols have lived basically where modern Russia is for centuries. And yeah, I know most of them are now in Mongolia nowadays. But back then, when they were conquering and creating the Mongol Empire, they were technically already there. Basically, to not keep your army tired, keep them on the move, and try not to keep them tired too. Let them have adequate rest. Try to take all the advantages and understand all these 9 types of ground and the ways you should use in all 9 types of ground. Fight, do not fight, stay, halt, retreat, keep going, or fight to the death. Literally. Alright, now it's time for a summary of Chapter 12. Now, Chapter 12 here, it's most famous, mostly because it's known as Attack by Fire. Now, attack by fire. When you go ahead and attack by fire, it's the first, you have to go ahead and burn people, obviously. So what do you burn, essentially? What do your pyrotechnicians have to do with? First of all, you have to burn the men. You have to burn the soldiers so that they run away and are panicking. Then you have to go ahead and burn the supplies. Once you burn the supplies, they will not be able to recover, or at least not recover fast enough. The third one is to go ahead and burn their equipment. Once you burn away all their swords, all their gear, all their leather, all their that kind of stuff, well, yeah, there's not much else you can do now. Once you go ahead and burn the equipment, then you won't be able to go ahead and move anything at all, and you won't be able to get supply trains back. The fourth is to burn their warehouses, their storages. This also burns their supplies as a bonus too. And the fifth one is obviously you have to burn their communications. Once you go ahead and destroy their communication lines, they cannot communicate with each other. And remember, back then in ancient China days, the fastest message only took 7 days to do, get there. So basically, even if you wanted to plan, you would probably not have noticed that the other party has not received it until 14 days later. Double the time that it would have taken you, double the time that would go ahead and realize that, hey, why is there no messenger here? Are they still thinking that kind of stuff? And then they wait an entire month and they realize, what the heck is happening? And they realize that their lines of communication have been cut. It's like cutting the internet, but 1,000 bajillion times slower. you must go ahead and attack by fire. And obviously, SUN-TZU's advice goes ahead and says, okay, if you want to attack by fire, you need to have a bunch of these materials ready. Once you have these flammable materials ready and you can go ahead and adapt to fire, you be able to go ahead and use these 5 changes of fire. If fire breaks out within the enemy camp, you have to respond at once because they will be running out, and then you have to attack them there. Let the fire reach your site, and then you have to go ahead and follow it up possible. And if you can't do that, we'll just wait. If fire attack is possible, and then you do not have to wait for fire to be started within, then you have to light it, and you have to have the time to be right. Basically an early version of the gunpowder bomb. When you go ahead and start a fire by upwind, you must never go ahead and attack downwind. When you go ahead and send fire up, no go down, because fire will go down. And in war, there are these 5 changes, and you must understand all these 5 changes essentially. Once you go ahead and understand how attacking by fire works, you must assist in that fight. The enlightened ruler considers deeply. The effective general, must follow it through. The ruler must never go ahead and mobilize his men out of anger, and a general must never engage battle out of spite. Don't go ahead and be tricked into a trap. Don't be lured into the traps because you were just mad at them, because you were being enraged at them, or you were provoked by them and it worked. You must never do that, especially when there is a fire. Be careful with fire too, because a dead man cannot be brought back to life. Once you go ahead and have an enlightened ruler, you must be prudent. There is an effective general that's always the most cautious. And this is the way you can go ahead and keep a nation at peace, and an army will be intact. This is basically attack by fire. And this is by far the most fun video, because pyrotechnicians are the best. And fire is always the best area of effective damage. It's the best AoE damaging effect ever, fire. Fire is the OG. So I hope you guys enjoyed this episode of Hunter Sean. Thank you for watching my summaries of chapter 11 to 12. I'll see you guys in the summary of chapter 13. Bye bye.